Hey everyone, welcome to the next video in this Blender beginners tutorial series where we model this isometric scene in Blender. So if you haven't watched the previous video, make sure to check that out. I'll link it in the description. Now let's continue where we left off in the last video. Let's start by creating a window. Okay guys, now let's create some windows for our scene. Press Shift A and this will bring the add menu. Go to mesh and let's add a cube. So let's press G and Z to bring it slightly above like this. Let's press N to bring the side panel. I'm going to input some dimensions for this cube. So for the X, I'm going to type in 0.227, and for the Y-axis, I'm going to type in 1.32, and for the Z-axis, I'm going to type in 2.13. So I have done this before, that's why I'm applying the exact values. You can apply the exact values that I type in, or you can just scale it roughly, it doesn't matter. Now let's zoom in a little bit and let's press G and X and move it so that it fits rightly. Okay, now press Shift D to create a duplicate of this and press H to hide it temporarily. So you can see that here. I'm going to select this one, press S and X to scale it out like this. So we are going to use this cube as a boolean cutting object to create a hole in this wall. Hold your shift key and click this wall object and press Ctrl Shift V. So this will bring in the bool tool menu, and under the brush booleans choose difference. This will nicely cut out the object. Remember the add-on that we enabled previously, bool tool. This function is actually powered by that add-on. So the cutter is actually hidden from the viewport and also from the render automatically using the add-on. So you don't have to worry about that showing up in the final render. Now let's bring back the hidden object. I'm going to go into the outliner and let's enable the object. Now press select this, press tab to enter edit mode. So I'm going to make a partition in the middle. Now press Ctrl R to add a loop cut and press 3 to enter the face mode. I'm going to select all these front and back faces. Hold your shift to select those faces. Now press I to insert. So I don't want the insert to happen like this. So I'm going to press I to create a boundary like this. So I think it looks fine. The center portion seems to be a bit thicker than the other border. So I'm going to press Alt Z to enter the X-ray mode, press 1 for the vertex mode. I'm going to select all these middle vertices and slightly scale it in the Z axis using S and Z to match the proportion roughly. I think it looks fine. Now let's switch back to the face mode by pressing 3. Now select these two faces first. Right click and go to the loop tools. The add-on we enabled, remember, and choose bridge. So this will nicely create a hole. Now select these two faces and right click and go to the loop tools and choose bridge. So we have a really nice window. I think it looks fine. Okay, good. Now let's create the sofa, our main attraction object of the scene. So press Shift A. Let's go to the mesh and let's add another cube. Let's bring it slightly above. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier. Go to the add modifier options and let's add a subdivision surface. So this will really smooth out all these faces and vertices in the mesh. So if I press tab, you can see the original shape is still there, but the modifier has smoothed this object really nicely. So let's increase the levels viewport to 3 and also the render to 3. So this will create even more smoother object, and press tab to enter the edit mode and press / to enter the local space. So this will isolate the selected object from the main viewport so that we can work with our mesh more independently. Press A to select everything, press S and Z to scale it down, something like this. So right now everything is really smooth and it is rounded, so we can fix that easily by adding loop cuts to fortify these edges in the surrounding. I'm going to press Ctrl R to add a loop cut in the middle and Ctrl R to add a loop cut over here. Now hold your Shift and Alt key and click over here or here. So this will select the edge loop, and press Ctrl B to bevel this about there. Okay, that looks fine. Now press Tab to enter the object mode, and let's shade this auto smooth. Now press Shift D to create a duplicate, and press G and Z to move it down. I think it looks fine. Maybe we can move it a bit down even more. Okay, cool. Press Tab to enter edit mode, press A to select everything, press S and Z to scale it in the Z axis. Maybe we can flush this even more in the Z axis. Okay, it looks cool. Now let's select these faces, hold your Shift key, and if you hold your Control key and select over here, this will select these faces like this. Again, I'm holding my Control key and selecting this. Once you have selected this U-shaped faces, press Alt E and choose extrude faces along normals. So this will extrude these faces out like this. So somewhere like this. Stop right there. And if you go to the operator panels down here and check offset even, this will fix this offset of this object. Now let's select all these above faces. Remember, hold your Control key to select faces from the shortest path. So press E and extrude it above to create the surroundings of this. So far, let's stop right there. That looks good. Now let's add an edge loop to fortify these edges, and let's add an edge loop in the middle like this to push this even further. Now press 3 to enter the face mode, select these faces, press E to extrude. Let's stop right there. Now let's extrude once more, and let's stop right there. Now let's select these faces, hold your Shift key to select them, press E to extrude them out to create this. Now press 2 to enter edge mode. Let's select these two edges, press G and Z to slightly push them above like this to create some interesting shape. I think it looks good. Maybe we can select these two faces, and if you go to this option over here, so proportional editing, the shortcut is O. If you press O key on your keyboard, this will enable the proportional editing. This will allow us to scale or rotate object proportionally with more smooth fall off. So press G, you can see this circle over here. This is called circle of influence. This allows you to scale objects proportionally. If you see, if I move this object, it is moving a bit more proportionally. So I'm going to right click to cancel this right now. So because I have messed up the proportions, so I click to cancel. Now press G and Z again to move this above like this. Maybe we can slightly scale down in the x-axis. I'm slightly scrolling out to create the fall off a little bit bigger. So I think it looks much fine, I guess. Maybe we can slightly scale these edges inside. I'm going to turn off the proportional editing this time. S and X, they ever so slightly. Now let's create the backrest and the headrest cushion. So press Tab to enter the object mode. Let's select this. Press Shift D to create a duplicate. Pressing Z to restrict the movement in the Z axis. I'm going to stop right there. Now rotate this object in the X axis. So to rotate the object, press R, and if you want to rotate it in X axis, press X. And for perfect rotation in the X axis, I'm going to type in 90 degrees. So in case if you want to rotate it in the other direction, make sure to put in a minus after typing in 90. So right now this looks fine. Left click to confirm the rotation, press 7 to enter the top orthographic view, press G and Y, and let's push this in. I think it looks great. It's coming in this side. So I'm going to enter the edit mode. Just click and drag to select these and press G, Y, and slightly push them in. Okay, that looks fine. Let's use this one to again to create this headrest. Press Shift D and Z to move it above like this. Press Tab to enter the edit mode. Press A to select everything. Yes, and Z to scale it in the Z axis. One for front view. I'm going to bring it down a little. G and Z. So also maybe not too much. Maybe we can push this above like this. Okay, let's enter the edge mode and select this edge loop. Hold your Alt key and click this to select this edge loop and press G and Z to bring it down. Now let's enter the X-ray view using Alt Z, and let's select this edge and this edge like this, and press G and Z to bring this down to create some interesting shape. Maybe we can select these three faces and slightly bring it in the y-axis. Maybe we can slightly adjust this cushion. Okay, now let's select this. Just tap to enter the edit mode. Press 2 and select all these edges. Press G and Z to slightly bring it down. Maybe even slightly scale it in the x-axis like this. Don't worry much about this overlapping. We will not be seeing this. So maybe we can still add a loop cut in this direction to fortify all these edges. I think now it looks much more solid. Maybe we can push these edges a bit more in the y-axis, and maybe we can select all these edges and slightly scale it in the x-axis also. Okay, that looks much better now. Now let's select everything, press Ctrl J, and let's join it into a single object. Press F2 and let's call this one sofa. Press / to exit the local space, and right now the sofa is gigantic comparing to our scene. So I'm going to press S and scale it down. I think that seems like a reasonable size. Maybe we can go a little bit bigger because this is a completely stylized isometric scene, so we don't really need to worry much about the proportions and all. We can afford to go a bit wide, I guess. Okay, that looks great. Now we need to create some legs for the sofa. Press Shift A and go to mesh, and let's add a cylinder. And right now it's 32 vertices. I think it's a bit too much for something that's so trivial, so I'm going to set this to 24 for a much lesser resolution. Now press / to enter the local space. So press tab to enter edit mode. Let's select this above portion, press G and Z to move it up, and let's scale this one slightly. And I'm going to select this bottom faces using the X-ray mode. Press Ctrl B and create a really nice bevel, and scroll your mouse wheel to add some more segments to create a smoother bevel. Now the leg is really big, so I'm going to select everything and press S to scale it down, something like this. Now press / to exit the local space. Now you can see it a bit more clearly. Okay, I think this seems a reasonable size. Maybe we can scale this along the X and Y axis down so that it looks a bit more thinner. To do that, you can press S and Shift Z. So this will scale this object except in Z axis. So scale it only in the X and Y axis. So that's what we want. Maybe let's stop right there. I'm going to press 7 for the top view, and let's bring it over here. Make sure that it is touching the ground. Don't worry about overlapping this one. So I think everything's looking great. Maybe we can slightly rotate this in the x-axis somewhere like this. Okay, or we can even scale this a little bit bigger. Okay, now let's shade this auto smooth. Now we need to create the rest of these 3 legs, and we can mirror this one on other 3 sides. Now let's see the orange dot that you see here. This is what called the origin of any object, so origin of the geometry. So if I try to rotate this, you can see it is using this origin as a pivot point to rotate this. So to move the origin to this object, you can right click and go to the set origin option and origin to geometry. This will bring the origin point back to the geometry. And let's add a mirror modifier over here using the modifiers panel. So this will automatically add a mirror object in the x-axis. Right now you can't see the mirror object, and that is because usually the mirror object is uses this origin point as the mirror point. So right now it is mirroring in itself. If I go to the edit mode and select everything and press G, you can see if I move this, that is a mirror, and it is mirroring in itself. You can use the mirror object as something else to determine how your object should be mirrored. So we can use this sofa as a mirror object. So let's select this eyedropper and click this sofa. This will nicely mirror this in the x-axis. If you also turn on the y-axis, you can see it also create these two. Now we have perfectly created the legs. Now let's create some footrest for our sofa. Press Shift A, let's go to mesh, let's add a cube. Again press Ctrl 3 to add 3 times of subdivision surface. So anywhere between Ctrl 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will add that many times of subdivision. And one thing you have to do is you have to adjust the render subdivision levels over here. So make sure the level of viewport and the render times is same. So in case if you have any kind of performance issue, I suggest you to turn down the levels of viewport. Let's keep it up to 3 in the render, and let's keep it down to a minimum value in the viewport. So this will only affect the what we see, but in the result it will refer this render subdivision. So I can handle 3 times subdivision, so it's not a problem for me. Now press tab to enter the edit mode. Once again press G. I'm going to move this above a little bit. Let's squeeze this down, and let's add a loop cut over here and here, and let's bevel this like we did before. In case if you see a number of bevels, you can scroll down your mouse to get rid of those extra bevels, or you can use the operator panel. I think it looks great. Now press 3 to enter the face mode. Turn on the proportional editing. I'm going to select this face, press G and Z, and slightly push this up and scroll your mouse in a little bit to create a nice bulge like this. Now let's add a loop cut down here and push this down. I think it looks much better. Let's shade this auto smooth and scale this down. Again, set the origin to geometry. Maybe it's a little bit square. I don't like that. So let's slightly scale this in the x-axis, and let's press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Also, let's select this sofa, press Ctrl A and apply scale. So even though we are not going to add any more modifiers, it's good practice to apply scale and rotation all the time. Now let's press Shift D to create another duplicate. Press S and Z to scale it down. Let's make this footrest a little bit more interesting. Let's enter the edit mode and select all these surrounding edges. While the proportional editing is still on, I'm going to press S and scale it out like this. Select these legs from the sofa and press Shift D to create a duplicate, and press Y and move it in the Y axis like this. Use this legs for the footrest and press S to scale it down a little bit, and I'm going to change the mirror object to this footrest so that it's perfectly mirroring across this one, and press G and Z and let's push this in. Maybe we can push this in a little bit in the Y axis also. I'm just shifting between front and side view using 1 and 3 on my numpad, so make sure that you follow along. Now let's select the rest of these and press G and Z and move it down. Now let's create a really nice carpet. Press Shift A, let's go to mesh, let's add a circle. I think 32 seems great. Right now it is hidden under the floor, so let's press G and Z, bring it above like this, and let's align this circle with our footrest. Press F3 and let's choose align object. Let's align this in the Y axis now, so it's perfectly aligned, and I'm okay with the size also. So let's press tab to enter the edit mode, press A to select everything, and press F. So this will fill this circle with a face. Now press E to extrude it out and give it some thickness like this. It looks much great. Now So I have forgot to add a bevel modifier for this window. So let's quickly select this one and select our crown molding and press Ctrl L to bring the link transfer data menu, and let's choose copy modifiers. So this will transfer the bevel modifier. This will actually share the bevel modifier with this window. In case the bevel is not happening perfectly, make sure to apply the scale. So you can see how not applying the scale has affected our window. Now the window looks much better. And if you don't like this kind of crunching, make sure you go to the geometry and set the meter outer to arc. This will have a really nice effect. And let's shade auto smooth. Now let's add the bevel modifier for our carpet too. I'm going to select these two objects, press Ctrl L and choose copy modifiers. So make sure that you select the object that you want to share the modifier first, and select the donor object second, and press Ctrl L and choose the copy modifier. That way you will transfer your modifier perfectly. If you do this other way around, it doesn't work. Now press select this carpet and press Ctrl 2 to add a subdivision surface modifier. So you can see the difference it makes. Press Ctrl 2. So make sure your bevel modifier is staying above the subdivision surface. If it is below, kinda, do something like this, which we don't want. So make sure your bevel modifier is above the subdivision. Okay, now that we have added the carpet, legs is slightly above the surface. Let's create a simple table. Press Shift A, go to mesh. Let's add a cylinder. Press S and Z to scale it down. Press G and Z to move it above. I'm going to copy the modifiers from this one. Shade auto smooth, and let's slightly increase the bevel amount to create a bit more rounder profile. Shade auto smooth. I'm going to scale this down. Let's go to the edit mode and scale this down and stop right there. And let's move this down here. I'm going to add a loop cut and press Ctrl B to bevel this to fortify these edges like this. We can also select these two faces and press I to insert them to create even more support for these edges. I think maybe we can slightly scale them. Set the origin to geometry and slightly scale them in the Z-axis to create a bit more chunkier look. And let's apply the scale and rotation. So you can see Shift D to create a duplicate, press S and Shift Z to scale the object except in the Z-axis, press G and Z to move it down. Let's enter the edit mode and enter the vertex mode, and entering the X-ray mode, press G and Z, bring it down. Make sure to turn off the proportional editing. G and Z, press G and X to move it out like this. Maybe we can slightly rotate this a little bit. Yeah. Also, let's bring this one above. Press G twice to slide this in. Also selecting this, hold your Alt key to select these edge loops like this, and press G twice to move this above. Okay, so that is a really cool trick to create rest of these legs. Now let's create a duplicate. Press Shift D. Make sure that you have this in the hold like this, and press R, Z and 90 and left click to confirm. So you have to do this in a sequence like this, and press Shift R a couple of times. So this will repeat the action 2 more times. Okay guys, that's it for this video. Let's continue the rest in the next part. Make sure to get to this point and don't skip anything. In case if you have any doubts, please leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And if you find this tutorial useful, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more future contents, and hit the bell icon to get notified instantly when I release them. So that will be for this video. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.